It appears that when it comes to reserve list investing, the whole thing has become like a giant Ouroboros, just a snake eating its own tail. What is going on in the world? Greetings, owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles. Since it's a topic people like to talk about, the whole reserve list thing, and there has been another wave of insanity, I wanted to talk about the reserve list, the choices that people are making, and organic demand versus inorganic demand, and how that drives card prices, okay? So this is obviously going to be focused on the reserve list. If you don't know what the reserve list is, on some off chance, because there are some people who watch me who aren't like super into every aspect of Magic, the reserve list is just a bunch of old school cards Wizards of the Coast said they would never reprint again, all right? And as a result of that, it's caused a number of different decisions being made by people, but it does drive like investment style choices. And there is more of a frenzy going on with it right now. And I think that has to do with what's going on in the world. Now, this is a concept that I'm not well versed in because I am not a wealthy individual. But if you are a wealthy individual, if you're somebody who actually makes more money than you need, and by this I'm just saying, if you make more money than it costs to pay all your bills, let's say your like monthly bills are $2,000, but you're making $20,000. You know what I mean? Even after you've spent however much on whatever, like all your living expenses taken care of, all your extra spending, like I bought myself a teddy bear with a chocolatey center. I can't eat it. The chocolate's inside the fur. What did that cost me? $200. But even then, you got thousands of dollars left over, right? And then what do you do with that money? Well, you put it in the bank. Well, unfortunately, invest it, do whatever. Because what goes on is essentially inflation just eats the value of your money. For those of us who are just engaged in getting by every day, you don't worry about that so much. But if you're somebody who has like tens or hundreds of $1,000s in the bank and you look at it and you're basically like, my money's on fire. I've got to find a way to like take that money and use it to make more money just to keep my purchasing power. You know what I mean? Like if $100,000 is only going to buy as much as $80,000 will later on down the line, you know what I mean? Then it feels like, oh, my money is being devalued. So people look for locations to put their money to protect the value of their money. And I think that's part of what drives this reserved list thing, right? Because the reserve list is an enticing thing to put your money in from the perspective of they can never reprint these cards. And because they can never reprint these cards, the supply of these cards can't increase. And as a result, like they're more likely to hold their value over time. That's the perception that people have. But it doesn't take into account, like, there are two things that determine the selling price of things. And the supply side of it is a big factor, but demand is also a big factor. So the cards that are being bought right now off of the reserve list, the ones that are spiking through the roof, that's inorganic demand. So to make sure we're all on the same page, I'm going to give you an example of organic demand first, all right? We're going to talk about another card that has spiked recently. All of this information is coming from a website called Mtg Stocks, okay? This is a great website if you like to track card prices. They have like a little stock ticker up at the top that tells you all the different cards that are spiking. And once a week, they will go into their weekly winners and losers in terms of cards that have had a massive spike. And I don't always check this website out because I honestly don't pay a ton of attention to Magic financial markets. It's not something that interests me very much. It's not something that's super important to me. But when it comes to certain ways that the market moves and acts, that is interesting to me. So I don't pay attention to look at what I can invest in because I don't have investing money, right? But I do look at it to see how the market's moving, what's going on, what spiked every once in a while. Because I have a bunch of old school stuff, so I don't complain. Hey, if the card's going to go up in value, great for me. I can dig out old copies and get rid of them. But anyways, I want to talk about Flagstones of Trochaire, okay? Let me just, hold on. Let me just pop this up on the screen so I can see it. I couldn't remember exactly what the fluctuation was in the price. So, Flagstones of Trochaire has gone up 165%. It's now a $15 card, which is it's a massive jump, okay? But the reason for this makes perfect sense. Let's look at what Flagstones of Trochaire does in case you don't already know. It's a legendary land that taps for a white mana, comes into play untapped, that's important to note. When it's put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you may search your library for a Plains card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library. What does the flavor text say? It says, dust-spiked winds eroded the stones, but the ground where they stood still holds power. All right, so it's like, these are just the remnants of Trochaire, and there is still magical power contained within them. I mean, on the surface of it, it's a pretty underwhelming legendary land. You go, wait, what? But the legendary land aspect of it actually makes the card more functional, because what it lets you do is put out a second Flagstone of Trochaire, and then you can just sack either one of them, right? You can tap the first one for mana if you want, and then legendary rule says you got to get rid of one of them. So you get rid of one of them, you go get another land. Now, if you've been paying attention to Zendikar, as soon as you heard this card, you go, whoa, wait, that's awesome for landfall, right? Play a Flagstones, trigger landfall. Sack one of your Flagstones to go and get a Plains, trigger landfall. So it's got bonus landfall triggers built into it. And with landfall getting a whole bunch of new cards, that's the hot topic. That's the big deal that's going on right now. So this push upwards in the price for the Flagstones of Trochaire makes perfect sense. It's like, hey, there's a lot more landfall strategies. That is organic demand. It's demand based on actual desire of players to acquire these cards for play use, right? And when you have organic demand, it tends to stabilize the prices higher and keep them where they are. Now, inorganic demand is what we're seeing with both Krovax and Rashida Scalebane. All right, so we'll look at Krovax first. Krovax is 2 black and 2, and he is essentially a 4/4. It says 0/0 down in the corner, but he comes into play with 4+1/+1 counters on him. He counts as a vampire. This is such an old school creature. It would just say legendary creature, vampire. Who knows? They may have even given him a job. He might be a vampire tickler for all I know. But anyways, he comes with 4+1/+1 counters. During each upkeep, your upkeeps, you have to sacrifice a creature. If you do, you put a +1/+1 counter on Krovax. If you don't, you remove a +1/+1 counter from Krovax. Now, this isn't a may. You have to sacrifice a creature each turn. And you have to pay 1 black to give him flying. Think about that. This is a 4/4 that doesn't even fly unless you pay a black mana. And you have to sack a creature every turn. And all you get in return is that this guy grows by 1. This is a garbage card, okay? This is a piece of trash card. But it's seen a massive spike. The Trochaire saw a spike of about 150, 160%, right? This has seen a spike of 250%. Now, admittedly, the Flagstone starts at a higher price and moved up to $15. Krovax has only moved up to like $4.50. But the thing is, this is a 50-cent rare. They're like, this card is garbage. This card is absolute trash. And the same goes for Rashida Scalebane. And Rashida Scalebane, I actually could see, like, if you want to be as technical as possible, you could say somebody might be interested in Krovax because of the lore associated with it. Because the story associated with Krovax is amazing. In fact, I have a great video on this channel going into the backstory of Krovax, and we'll be talking about Krovax's story way, way more in depth over on my lore channel. So if there was people who are interested in Krovax from a historical perspective, I could see them wanting the card. But that's not enough to push demand up in any way, right? This is a character from decades ago. The number of people that are going to be interested in it is minimal. So there's no logical reason for there to be an increased interest in Krovax. Rashida Scalebane is the same deal. 2 white and 3 for a 3/4. She taps to bury target attacking or blocking dragon, and you gain an amount of life equal to that dragon's power. How pointlessly niche is that, right? If your buddy has a dragon deck, then you can be like, haha, I'm gonna put out Rashida Scalebane. but she's so easy to destroy, right? It only hoses dragons. She can't even destroy a dragon unless it's attacking or blocking, so you can easily stop her ability from being relevant. She may as well just say, dragons probably shouldn't attack or block while I'm out. That's her ability, and that's not very exciting. The flavor text says it's not by the blood of dragons that Rashida measures victories, but by the sum of children who no longer wake from nightmares of scales and fire. Rashida not only holds the record for being Magic's most likely ugliest woman, she also is actually a really cool character. She is a peasant and basically lost her entire family and everyone she knew to Dragonfire. She's out in the hills doing peasant things, comes home, the whole village just basically destroyed by dragons, right? So she takes up her sword, which is actually a Bane sword, names it Scalebane, and starts destroying dragons with it. Like, she's responsible for the destruction of at least a dozen dragons. Her followers would parade through the towns with giant dragon heads. They would just bring them with them, like, look what we got! So Rashida Scalebane is a really cool character. That's not actually her last name. Her last name isn't Scalebane. That's the name of her sword. But the legend around her got so muddled up that they just started to call her Rashida Scalebane. So again, very cool flavor card, but garbage. This is a garbage card. This is another one that shot up to 450. So why are these shooting up? It's because reserve list individuals are looking to feed on each other. At the beginning of the video, when I said they're like an Oberos or whatever it's called, where it's that circular ring where you can see a snake with its tail in its own mouth and it's biting down on its own tail. That's what it feels like. It feels like the investing for the reserve list has become almost cannibalistic, where these cards aren't targeted because there's any desire for them whatsoever. They're targeted because they're really like low cost cards, and people like, if I buy up a bunch of copies of this, then maybe other reserve list buyers, maybe other people who are looking to use the reserve list as a safe harbor will buy these up, and then I can sell into the higher prices, thus doubling, tripling, quadrupling my money. I mean, there is the potential for that, but just the idea that you think you could move a ton of Krovax the Cursed or Rashida Scalebanes to anybody, it really does feel like the whole Dutch tulip scenario where like a long time ago, everybody was convinced into the whole, like, you know what, tulips are worth a ton of money, and like the tulips sold for all kinds of crazy money, and people were absolutely insane about these tulips and buying all these bulbs, and like fortunes were made and lost over them, and then abruptly overnight tulips went like Beanie Babies, and it was like only the true hardcore maniacs were like, this is still worth everything, while the rest of the world just turned around and went, yeah, okay, have fun with your tulips, pal. You know what I mean? Like that kind of scenario. So that's what this feels like. It feels like absolute desperation and insanity. It feels like the reserved list investors are like at their wits' ends, where they're just like, gotta find somewhere to bank my money in this, gotta find somewhere to bank my money. And then they turn and go, Krovax the Cursed and Rashida Scalebane. Those are rares that have the potential for people to like, what, dude, who's gonna buy Krovax? Let's say I do an amazing storyline setup over there on my other channel, and people decide I'm gonna buy some Krovaxes. That wouldn't be enough to move the needle by maybe 10 copies of Krovax, and I may be even overestimating my influence with storytelling ability. So to me, it's like, what are you doing? You've reached the point where you're just trying to feed on each other, and there's nothing underneath. It's castles in the sky. That's what it feels like, man. It's absolutely insane. It's basically hope for a bigger sucker. You know what I mean? Like, when it comes to investing in Magic the Gathering, the best thing it seems to do is to purchase cards that in the future people are going to want to play with. You know what I mean? Like, if you want an example of a card that seems like a decent card to grab at a low price and just leave sitting aside until the time comes to drop it, new card from Zendikar Rising. That new Skyclave Relic, whatever it's called, that might actually be the name of it. But it's essentially a dark steel ingot that you can make 3 copies of, right? Like, it's something that's pretty much guaranteed to be desirable in the future. How are Commander players not going to want that? So if somebody buys copies of that thinking, oh, in the future I'll be able to make more money, that at least makes sense. Like, I'm going to go on the record again saying I'm not a fan of like middlemaning and making the game more expensive for other people. If you're somebody who just like, look, I buy boxes, I buy this stuff, I keep some extra cards thinking I might use them or later on I might be able to get more out of them. That's different than somebody who's like, I don't even play this game. I'm just going to put like hundreds of dollars into buying a bunch of copies of this card and hope I can make the people who are playing the game pay more later on. I don't like that. That is where it moves into the realm of like, I wish you weren't doing what you're doing because you're just making the game more expensive for all of us. And while I would like everyone to have equal and easy access to all Magic cards. Early access doesn't make any sense. I want everybody to be able to access the cards they want, but at the same time, I don't want people to just, oh, your cards are worth a penny and you can't have any value. Because the thing is, you can use that to acquire more Magic and keep your stuff going. So I'm somewhere in the middle where I don't like inorganic market meddling, but I am okay with organic demand. I do wish that Wizards printed more of stuff, you know, and just kind of like eased things with a higher quantity to keep the prices from being quite as high as they are. But I understand from their perspective, keeping secondary market prices high is desirable. So I come somewhere in the middle where it's like, all right, dude, that didn't sound right. Anyways, that's not, don't take, I'm saying I'm professionally talking professionally here. That wasn't dirty, okay? All right? So I think you guys get the point that I'm trying to make here. Let me know your comments. Let me know your comments and the thoughts below, okay? Let me take a look at the thoughts down here. All right, anyway, good Lord. It's time for me to go, guys. It's time for me to head on out of here, maybe open some Zendikar Rising, all right? So I'm going to depart. If you like what I'm doing here, like, comment, subscribe. Make sure to thought the video because the YouTube really loves it when my video gets lots of thoughts. God. Okay, anyhow, if you love what I'm doing, join my Patreon. Best way to help out the channel. Thanks for coming by, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your Friday. I will see you all tomorrow or tonight if you come out to the live stream. Got multiple packages in the mail. Anyways, goodbye, my friends. See you soon.